is not the critic who counts. Not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood.
It's such a visceral image, isn't it? The dust, the sweat, the blood. It just, it really sets the stage.
It really does.
Yeah.
That is, of course, Theodore Roosevelt. It's from a speech he gave at the Sorbonne in Paris way back in 1910 called Citizenship in a Republic.
But nobody calls it that.
Nobody calls it that. History remembers it as the man in the arena speech. And he goes on to say that the credit belongs to the person who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly.
Daring greatly. And there it is.
That's the phrase. That's the phrase that launched 1,000 ships, or, well, at least one very, very important book. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are unpacking Daring Greatly by Dr. Brené Brown.
A big one.
A huge one. And I have to be honest with you. When I first heard this quote, before I really dug into Brown's work, I saw it the way I think most people do.
How's that?
I thought it was a poster for a boxing gym. I thought it was about grit. About getting your teeth kicked in, spitting one out, and just getting right back up.
Which is a totally fair interpretation on the surface.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's all about stamina and resilience.
Exactly. But looking at the source material we have today, it turns out that's not really the point, is it? It's not about the getting up. It's about the decision to even walk into the arena in the first place.
Precisely. It isn't about the fight. It's about the walk to the center of the ring. It's that fundamental decision to show up and let yourself be seen, even when you have absolutely zero control over what happens next.
And that is vulnerability.
That's vulnerability.
Which, let's be real, is absolutely terrifying for most of us.
It is. It can be excruciating. And that is exactly what we are going to explore today. We're going to try to dismantle this cultural myth, the one we all secretly believe, that vulnerability is weakness.
I'm so glad we're doing this.
We're going to look at what Brown calls the physics of vulnerability. We'll dig into how we armor up, why we do it, and, the mechanics of how to put that heavy armor down so we can actually live a life of engagement and purpose.
The physics of vulnerability. I love that phrasing because it implies there are, laws to this. It's not just soft, fuzzy feelings. It's actual cause and effect.
It's a system.
It's a system. So before we get into the mechanics of it, let's introduce our guide here, Dr. Brené Brown. She is everywhere these days, Netflix specials, viral TED Talks. But for anyone who has been maybe living under a rock or just knows the name but not the background, who are we dealing with?
So she's a research professor at the University of Houston. She holds the Huffington Foundation Endowed Chair there. Her PhD is in social work. But I think the most important thing to get about her, and this is so crucial for understanding the book, is her methodology.
Right. She's not a numbers person, per se.
Not in the traditional sense. She's a qualitative researcher.
Yeah.
She doesn't just crunch stats in a spreadsheet. She listens to stories. She actually calls herself a researcher storyteller.
I like that.
She spends her life looking for patterns and themes in the messy, unstructured data of human experience.
And she spent, over a decade studying connection specifically? Is that right?
That was the original goal, yeah. She wanted to understand the anatomy of human connection. What makes it work? Why do some people seem to have it in spades and others just struggle? But, and this is the classic research paradox that makes her work so interesting, when she asked people to tell her about connection,
They couldn't do it?
they couldn't really do it. They kept telling her about disconnection.
That is so fascinating. It's like you ask someone, tell me about love, and they immediately start talking about their first heartbreak.
Exactly that. She asked about belonging, and they talked about being excluded. She asked about connection. They talked about profound isolation. And beneath all of those stories of disconnection, she found these two massive, dark undercurrents: shame and fear.
Wow.
So she didn't just get to study the happy, shiny stuff. She ended up having to map out the very things that sever connection.
And what I find so relatable about her entry into this, and I really think this is why people trust her so much, is that she admits she hates this stuff.
Oh, she's very open about that.
She isn't some Zen master floating on a cloud telling us all to be one with the universe.
Yeah.
She describes herself as a fifth-generation Texan with a lock-and-load mentality.
Beer and barbecue, I think, is the phrase she uses. She's very, very practical.
Right. She said she spent her life trying to outrun vulnerability, trying to outsmart it. She figured if she could just measure it and quantify it, she'd control it. And then The data looked back at her and essentially said, nope, you can't outrun this.
She calls that period her breakdown, which I believe her therapist later encouraged her to reframe as a spiritual awakening. But you're right, the data basically humbled her. She realized that vulnerability isn't something you can opt out of.
It's not optional.
It's the absolute non-negotiable requirement for a wholehearted life. You literally cannot have love or belonging or joy without it. And that realization terrified her so much that she had to go to therapy to deal with her own research findings.
I just love that image. Doctor, I have diagnosed the human condition and I hate it. Please help.
It's perfect.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We need to define our terms properly because vulnerability is one of those words that has been hijacked by pop culture. We hear it and we instantly think of, I don't know, crying in a boardroom or being a doormat or just being soft.
Or, the oversharing you see all over social media, which we'll definitely get to later, but that's not what we're talking about here.
So how does she actually define it in a research context? What are we working with?
She is very, very precise. She strips away all that cultural baggage and defines vulnerability as having 3 specific components: uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure.
Uncertainty, risk, emotional exposure. Okay, got it.
That's it. It's
Yeah.
not just an emotion like sadness or happiness. It is a state of being. It's the state of being in any situation where there are just no guarantees.
Okay, so let's make that concrete.
Right.
Because when you say risk and uncertainty, that can sound a little abstract. But the book is just full of these examples that hit you right in the gut, like saying, I love you first.
Oh, that's a huge risk. You are literally handing someone the power to shatter you, and you have no idea if they're going to say it back.
Or waiting for the doctor to call back with a biopsy result.
Total lack of control. That is pure uncertainty right there.
It's firing someone. Or, on the other side of the desk, it's asking for a raise. It's presenting a piece of art you poured your soul into to the world.
Exactly. Anytime you move from the private sphere to the public sphere with something you genuinely care about, you are in a state of vulnerability. And here's the key insight. I think this is the point she makes that just changes everything. Vulnerability is the core, the birthplace of all emotions.
There's the physics part again.
Yes. To feel anything is to be vulnerable. If you really think about it, you can't experience joy or trust or creativity without accepting some level of uncertainty. You can't be creative if you're not willing to be vulnerable, because creativity is inherently about making something new that might fail.
That might get laughed at.
That might get laughed at. It's about birth. And birth is messy and risky and has no guarantees.
So if you try to numb vulnerability because you don't want to feel the fear or the shame of it all, you inadvertently numb your ability to feel the good stuff too.
You flatline. You can't selectively numb emotion. You can't say, okay, I'm going to block out all the potential for heartbreak, but I'm going to keep all the love. It doesn't work that way. When you block the heartbreak, you block the capacity for love. You just end up in this gray zone of existing, not really living.
And that brings us directly to the myths.
Yeah.
Because even if we intellectually understand that definition, uncertainty, risk, exposure, we have these deep-seated scripts running in our heads. We have been programmed by society to see vulnerability in a very specific and usually negative way. And Brown just takes a sledgehammer to these myths.
He really does.
The first one, and probably the most dangerous one, is vulnerability is weakness.
This is the big one. And it's so fascinating how our brains work here. Brown points out this massive discrepancy in how we view vulnerability in the world versus how we view it in ourselves.
The double standard.
A huge double standard. When we see someone else being vulnerable, say walking onto a stage to give a speech, or admitting they made a mistake, or sharing a really hard truth about their life, we look at them and we think, wow, that's brave. That is so courageous.
We call it raw. We call it authentic. We give them a standing ovation in our minds.
Exactly. We are drawn to it in other people. But when we are the ones in that situation, when we are the ones standing on that precipice of doing something vulnerable, we don't think, I'm being brave.
No, we think, I'm weak.
Yeah.
Everyone is going to see that I'm inadequate. I'm going to get crushed.
She has that incredible metaphor about being naked, right?
Yes, tell us about that.
She says vulnerability feels like being naked on stage and just hoping for applause, but being absolutely terrified of laughter.
And nobody wants the laughter. That is the nightmare scenario.
Yeah. But her point, and this is a point backed by thousands of interviews, is that there is no equation where taking risks and braving uncertainty equals weakness. It's just not mathematically possible. In fact, vulnerability is the most accurate measure of courage we have.
Say more about that. That's a powerful statement.
You cannot be courageous without first being vulnerable. It's impossible. If you aren't feeling that uncertainty and risk, you aren't being brave, you're just being safe. If the outcome is guaranteed, it doesn't take courage to do it.
I love that connection. Courage requires vulnerability.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to myth number 2.
Yeah.
This is the one I think a lot of tough professions fall into. The I don't do vulnerability myth.
Ah, yes. The I can opt out myth. You hear this all the time from lawyers, engineers, surgeons, military personnel.
Right.
The logic is something like, I'm trained to be objective, I deal in facts, not feelings, I have a job to do, and this stuff just gets in the way.
I eat vulnerability for breakfast. That kind of attitude.
Right. But the reality, according to all the research, is that vulnerability does you if you don't do it. You can't just opt out of the fundamental uncertainty of life. You can't opt out of the risk inherent in relationships.
So what actually happens to those people? The ones who refuse to acknowledge it, where does that energy go?
It has to go somewhere. It doesn't just, evaporate. And usually it festers, it turns into fear, it turns into anger, it turns into judgment, and most of all, it turns into a desperate need for control.
Control. Yeah, that feels like the key word there.
It is. When you see a leader who is micromanaging everyone, who screams when things don't go perfectly, who absolutely refuses to listen to feedback, that isn't strength. That's a person who is terrified of vulnerability.
So they're just armoring up.
They are armoring up because they can't handle the uncertainty of letting go. So the very people who think they're opting out are actually letting vulnerability run the show from behind the scenes. They're constantly reactive, never proactive.
Okay, myth number 3. And this is a really important one because I think social media has completely confused the issue here.
Right.
The myth that vulnerability is just letting it all hang out.
Yes. The oversharing myth. Brown is so clear on this. Vulnerability is not live tweeting your meltdown. It is not boundaryless disclosure.
She calls it floodlighting, right? Like just blasting people with your trauma before you've even built a relationship.
Exactly. That isn't vulnerability. That's often an attempt to numb pain or get attention, or frankly, it's just a lack of boundaries. Real vulnerability is based on mutuality. It requires trust.
So it's about who you're sharing with.
It's about sharing your story with people who have earned the right to hear it.
Earned the right to hear it. That's such a strong, important boundary. It's not a purge. It's a connection.
It is a trust-building process. You don't walk up to a total stranger and hand them your deepest fears. You share a little, you see if they handle it with care, and then trust grows from there. If you share everything with everyone, that's not vulnerability. That's just exposure. And usually, people recoil from that because it feels, frankly, manipulative.
Which segues perfectly into the mechanics of trust. Because if we're only supposed to be vulnerable with people we trust, how do we build that trust? It feels like a bit of a chicken and egg situation. But she has this fantastic metaphor for it, the marble jar.
This is one of my absolute favorite practical takeaways from all of her work. It comes from this story about her daughter's classroom.
Right. Tell us about the jar.
So her daughter comes home from school one day just devastated because something happened with her friends. And Brown uses this analogy that the teacher uses in the classroom. The teacher keeps a big glass jar on her desk. When the class as a whole makes good choices, acts kindly, follows the rules, the teacher puts a handful of marbles in the jar.
And when they don't?
Marbles come out, and when the jar is full, they all get a pizza party.
Simple enough. Classic behavioral conditioning.
But Brown applies this to our adult relationships. See, we tend to have this very Hollywood idea of trust. We think trust is built by these grand, heroic gestures.
Dramatic moments.
Exactly. Like, I would take a bullet for you, or I saved you from a burning building, the rain-soaked confession. But her research shows that trust is actually built in the tiny, seemingly insignificant moments. The marble collection. She references the work of John Gottman here, calling them sliding door moments. It's all about small, consistent interactions.
Okay, so give us some examples of these marbles. What does a marble actually look like in a marriage or a friendship?
It's the smallest stuff. It's a friend remembering the name of your grandmother who's sick. It's someone asking, "How are you?" and actually stopping and making eye contact and listening to the real answer instead of just walking away.
It's showing up to the funeral.
It's showing up to the funeral. It's keeping a small secret someone told you. It's your partner realizing you're out of coffee and just buying more on their way home without being asked. It's those tiny deposits of care.
So it's the consistency that matters.
Exactly. Trust is a marble collection. It fills up slowly, one marble at a time. You can't hack trust. You can't just dump 1,000 marbles in the jar all at once with one grand gesture.
And on the flip side of that, betrayal isn't always the big, explosion, the affair, or, the embezzlement.
Those are definitely the jar smashers for sure. But she talks about a more subtle and in some ways more corrosive form of betrayal,
Hmm.
disengagement.
Disengagement. Explain that.
It's when people just stop trying. They stop caring. They stop putting marbles in the jar. They just let the connection wither on the mind. And Brown argues this is often worse than a singular big betrayal because it's so hard to pinpoint.
Right. You can't really scream at someone for not asking how my day was last Tuesday without sounding completely petty.
Exactly. But that slow, steady erosion of I don't care enough to pay attention to you anymore empties the jar just as effectively as smashing it on the floor. It creates this chasm where trust used to be. And that is so much harder to repair because there isn't one singular event to forgive. There's just a vast, painful emptiness.
That is heavy, but it makes so much sense. We feel that distance, even when we can't name it. And that distance feeds right into the next big topic she tackles, which is the wider culture we're all swimming in. She calls it a culture of scarcity.
The never enough culture.
Talk to me about this, because scarcity usually makes me think of economics. Not enough oil, not enough wheat. But she's talking about a mindset, a cultural condition.
Absolutely. Think about how you wake up in the morning. What is the very first thought that pops into your head? For so many people, before their feet even hit the floor, it's, I didn't get enough sleep.
Guilty every single day of my life.
And then what's the last thought you have before you go to bed at night?
I didn't get enough done. Also guilty.
We live in this constant humming state of deficiency. We aren't thin enough, we aren't smart enough, we're not rich enough, not safe enough, not promoted enough. Brown says scarcity isn't really about a lack of actual resources, it's about a lack of safety and connection. It's a low-grade, constant panic, and this panic is driven by three primary engines: shame, comparison, and disengagement.
And this connects to something really interesting she says about narcissism. We hear that word thrown around constantly these days. Oh, it's a narcissism epidemic. Everyone's so obsessed with themselves.
Right. We see the selfies and the self-promotion on Instagram, and our immediate reaction is to think it's all about excessive self-love. But Brown just flips that completely on its head.
What's her take?
She argues that what we're calling narcissism is actually the result of this scarcity culture. It's a shame-based fear of being ordinary.
Wow, that's a twist. So people aren't puffing themselves up because they love themselves too much. They're doing it because they're terrified of being overlooked.
Precisely. In a world of reality TV and influencer culture, ordinary has become synonymous with meaningless. If you aren't special, if you aren't famous, if you aren't exceptional in some way, then you don't matter. So people armor up with narcissism to avoid feeling that smallness, that insignificance. It's not self-love at all. It's a tragedy of self-worth. They are shouting, look at me, because they're terrified that if you don't look, they'll simply cease to exist.
That really makes you look at those carefully curated Instagram feeds differently. It's not ego, it's fear.
It's terror.
So what's underneath all of this? Under the narcissism, under the scarcity, under the lack of vulnerability, I guess we have to go into the swamp now. We have to talk about the S word, shame.
The gremlin.
The gremlin, that's what she calls it. And we have to talk about it, even though it makes everyone, deeply uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So first things first, we have to distinguish between shame and guilt. People use them interchangeably all the time. I feel so guilty, I feel so ashamed. But Brown is adamant that they are totally different things with wildly different outcomes.
They are worlds apart, and the
Yeah.
difference lies entirely in how you speak to yourself in that moment. Guilt is, I did something bad. Shame is, I am bad.
That is the massive distinction. One is about your behavior, the other is about your very identity.
Exactly. Guilt is uncomfortable, for sure, but it's
Yeah.
actually helpful. It focuses on the behavior. I messed up. I hurt someone's feelings. I need to apologize. I need to fix this. It holds us accountable. It drives positive change. It can even preserve a relationship. Shame, however, attacks the self. I am a mistake. I am unlovable. And when you believe you are the mistake, you can't fix it. You just want to hide. You want to disappear.
So guilt helps us grow, and shame just makes us shrink.
Yes. And the data backs this up in a huge way. Brown's research shows that shame is highly correlated with addiction, depression, eating disorders, and violence. Guilt, on the other hand, is inversely correlated with those things. Guilt actually helps us become better people. Shame just destroys us. It's a toxin. It shuts down the prefrontal cortex, the thinking, rational part of the brain, and sends us straight into fight or flight.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting and frankly a little heartbreaking. The gender differences. She found that shame feels the same for everyone. That hot wash of heat, the desire to disappear, but the triggers for it are very different for men and women.
Yes. The messages that shame delivers, the unspoken expectations we feel we have to meet, are organized by gender. For women, she says, shame is like a web.
The web. Unpack that for us.
It's this conflicting, impossible web of expectations. Be perfect, but don't ever let them see you sweating. Be sexy, but don't be a slut. Be assertive and a leader, but don't be bossy. Be a great mom, but for God's sake, don't talk about your kids too much.
It's a series of double binds. It's designed so you can't win.
You can't win. If you focus on your career, you're a bad mom. If
Yeah.
you focus on your kids, you're not leaning in hard enough. It's this pressure to be everything to everyone and to make it look effortless. And the primary triggers, the research found, are almost always body image and motherhood.
Those are the big buttons.
Those are the big red buttons shame presses for women. If you look wrong, or if you are perceived even for a second as a bad mother, the shame can be just overwhelming.
And for men, it's not a web.
No. For men, it's a box.
The box.
And the box is very, very small, and it has one simple rule written on all sides. Do not be perceived as weak.
That's it. Just one rule.
That's the core of it. For men, shame is failure. It's being wrong. It's being defective. It's showing fear, showing sadness, showing uncertainty. If you show any of that vulnerability, you are pushed out of the box and you are shamed for it. You're soft. You're a pussy. You're a loser.
And how do men typically respond to that shame? Because it seems like women tend to internalize and try to be smaller.
Brown calls it the pissed off or shut down response. When men feel that wash of shame, that feeling of being seen as weak or being criticized, they often convert it instantly into anger because anger feels like power.
Anger pushes people away.
It does. It's a shield. Or they go completely numb. They withdraw emotionally. They shut down to protect themselves from feeling anything at all.
And there's a really tough dynamic here that Brown's research uncovered. It's not just other men enforcing this box. It's not just the locker room talk.
No. And this was, I think, a hard pill for her and many of her readers to swallow. Often, it's the women in men's lives, their wives, mothers, girlfriends, who reinforce the box.
How so? Because you always hear women say, I just want you to talk to me. I want you to open up.
They say that, and they mean it on one level. But Brown talks about this knight on a white horse complex. We say we want vulnerability, but we also want the armor. We want men to be the rock. When a man is truly vulnerable, when he says, I'm scared, or I don't know what to do, or I think I failed, it can be terrifying for his partner.
It destabilizes their own sense of safety.
Exactly. And so they subtly, or sometimes not so subtly, send a signal. Hey, can you put the armor back on, please? Be strong. Don't be scared, because if you're scared, then I'm really scared.
That is just tragic. So men are trapped. They're scared to be vulnerable because other men will judge them as weak, and they're scared to be vulnerable because the women in their lives might get scared and push them away.
Correct. And that's why she argues that dismantling shame has to be a collective effort. We have to stop shaming men for having the full range of human emotions, and we have to stop shaming women for not being effortlessly perfect. We have to let men out of the box and let women out of the web.
Okay, so we've got the myths, the scarcity, the shame. This is sort of the landscape of the battlefield. Now let's talk about the defense mechanisms. Brown calls this the armory. This is how we protect ourselves from all this discomfort. And she identifies 3 main shields that we all use.
And we all use them. No one is immune here. We all have our go-to shield that we grab when we feel threatened.
The first one just blew my mind. It's called foreboding joy.
This is the most surprising one for a lot of people, and yet the second you name it, everyone recognizes it instantly in their own lives.
Explain this. Because joy sounds like a good thing. How can joy be a shield?
Okay, have you ever stood over your child while they are sleeping and you feel this overwhelming wave of love, just pure, heart-swelling joy, and then out of nowhere you suddenly picture something absolutely terrible happening to them? A car crash, a sudden illness.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
It's like a physical shudder that runs through you. It completely ruins the moment.
Yeah.
I honestly thought that was just me being neurotic.
It's not just you. She found it's nearly universal. That is foreboding joy. It's the paradoxical dread that hits us at the peak of our happiness. Because joy is the most vulnerable of all emotions. It takes us to the highest highs, and we know deep down that from there, the fall would be devastating.
So in that moment, we're trying to beat vulnerability to the punch.
Exactly. We self-sabotage. Our brain thinks, okay, if I imagine the tragedy now, if I rehearse the pain, it won't hurt as much if and when it actually happens. We try to prepare ourselves for disaster so we aren't blindsided by it. We're just waiting for the other shoe to drop.
But does that actually work? Does it soften the blow?
No, not at all. You cannot prepare for tragedy. You can't practice grief. If the unthinkable happens, it will crush you whether you worried about it for 10 years or not. All you're actually doing is robbing yourself of the present moment of joy. You are squandering the good stuff to prepare for bad stuff that might not even happen.
So what's the antidote?
hmm
How do we stop doing this? Because that shudder feels so automatic, so involuntary.
The antidote is gratitude. And she's very specific about this. It's not just an attitude of gratitude, it's an act of practice. When that shudder of fear hits, when you think this is too good to be true, you use it as a trigger. You don't try to push the fear away, but you don't let it spiral into a movie of disaster either.
You catch it.
You catch it, you stop, and you say, I am feeling vulnerable because I love this so much, and I am so grateful for this exact moment right now. You have to consciously anchor yourself in gratitude to tolerate the intense vulnerability of real joy.
Wow. Use the fear as a cue for gratitude, not as a cue for disaster planning.
Yeah.
That's huge. Okay, shield number 2, perfectionism.
Ah, the 20-ton shield.
We often wear this one as a badge of honor, don't we? Oh, I'm such a perfectionist. I just care too much about quality.
Mhm.
But Brown says perfectionism is not the same thing as striving for excellence.
A huge and critical distinction. Striving for excellence is healthy. It's internal. It's focused on you and the task. How can I improve? How can I do this well? I want this to be good because I care about the work. Perfectionism is external. It's not about you. It's about them. It's what will they think. It's a defensive move. The underlying belief is, if I look perfect and do everything perfectly, then I can avoid or minimize shame, judgment, and blame.
So it's all armor. It's not about the work itself. It's about protecting yourself from criticism.
It's the heaviest armor there is. We think it protects us, but it actually prevents us from being truly seen. It keeps us distant. And it's a hustle. It's completely exhausting because perfection is, by definition, impossible. You are running a race with a finish line that keeps moving further away. You're constantly looking over your shoulder for approval that never feels permanent.
And the antidote here, what's the way out of that hustle?
Self-compassion,
What's
which
that?
is simply treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding you would offer to a good friend who is struggling. It's acknowledging, I'm doing my best. I am enough just as I am. It's letting go of that hustle for approval and focusing back on the work itself. It's about being good enough rather than impossibly perfect.
I love that. The goal is enough, not perfect. Okay, shield number 3, numbing.
This one is so pervasive in our culture. And it's not just about drugs and alcohol, though those are obviously a huge part of it.
It's the crazy busy.
Oh, absolutely. We numb with food. We numb with endless scrolling on TikTok. We numb with working 80 hours a week so we never have a quiet moment. We keep ourselves so busy and distracted that we don't have to feel the silence or the loneliness or the pain.
But as we said earlier, the fundamental danger of numbing is
That you can't do it selectively. If you numb the sharp edges of the pain and the anxiety, you also numb the sharp edges of the joy and the creativity. You flatten your entire emotional life into this gray, muted existence. You lose your edge.
So the antidote isn't just sober up or put your phone down.
No, it's deeper than that. The antidote is setting boundaries and learning how to find true comfort. She makes this great distinction between true comfort, which actually revitalizes you, and shadow comforts, which just help you check out for a while.
Can you give an example of the difference?
Sure, like the difference between going for a long walk in nature to clear your head versus mindlessly eating a whole pint of ice cream in front of the TV.
Right.
One recharges you, the other just leaves you feeling worse and usually pretty ashamed. The real antidote is learning to sit with the discomfort, the anxiety, the boredom, the sadness, without instantly reaching for a buffer. It's learning to say, enough.
She also mentions a couple of what she calls minor shields that I think are worth a quick nod, especially for any high performers who might be listening. The Viking or victim mentality.
Right. She found this a lot in high-stress, high-stakes environments like law, Wall Street, or the military. It's this binary worldview. You are either a Viking, a conqueror, a killer, someone who dominates, or you are a victim, a loser, someone who gets crushed.
It's kill or be killed.
Exactly. And if you view the world that way, vulnerability is literally death. You can never, ever let your guard down. But the problem is you can't have real connection or intimacy if you're always wearing Viking armor. You can't be a Viking at work and then just come home and be a tender, open partner. The armor eventually fuses to your skin.
And finally, floodlighting. We touched on this before, but it's the idea of using vulnerability as a weapon.
Yes, it's oversharing to try and force a connection or to test people. It's that, okay, I'm going to tell you my darkest secret on our first date, and if you can't handle it, you don't deserve me. That's not vulnerability, that's a trap.
So we have the definition, the myths, the shame, the armor. This is a lot. Where do we go from here? What is the path forward? Brown calls it wholeheartedness.
Wholehearted living. The goal isn't to be perfect or bulletproof. The goal is to engage with the world from a place of worthiness.
I am enough.
Yes. And she's very clear that this isn't just a mantra you repeat, it's a daily practice. Courage is a habit. You don't just decide to be vulnerable once and you're done. You have to choose it over and over again. You choose every day to leave the armor on the floor.
And a big part of that practice is what she calls shame resilience. Not shame resistance, because we can't resist shame.
No, you can't be shame-proof. As long as you are a person who cares about connection with other people, you will feel shame. It's inevitable. You can only become resilient to it. And she outlines 4 clear steps to move through shame when it hits.
Let's run through them quickly. Step 1.
Recognize it. You have to know your physical signs. Do your palms sweat? Does your vision tunnel? Do you get that metallic taste in your mouth? You have to recognize that you are in a shame storm. Don't let it hijack you subconsciously. Name the feeling.
Okay, step 2.
Reality, check the messages. You have to talk to the messages shame is whispering in your ear. Is it really true that you're a terrible person because you made a mistake at work? Or is that just the perfectionism talking? Is it true that you're weak? Or are you just tired and overwhelmed? You have to filter the noise.
Step 3. This one feels critical.
It's the most important one. Reach out. Do not keep it a secret. Shame thrives in secrecy. It grows in the dark. If you keep it inside, it will metastasize. But if you share it with a trusted friend, someone who has marbles in their jar, not just anyone, it loses its power. Empathy is the antidote to shame.
And step 4.
Speak shame. Use the word. Actually say, I am feeling a lot of shame right now. It sounds almost too simple, but it is incredibly powerful. It moves the processing of the emotion from your primal emotional brain, the amygdala, to your logical thinking brain. It grounds you in reality.
So to wrap all of this up, it really does all come back to the arena, doesn't it?
It does. It all comes back to that Roosevelt quote. If you choose to live a wholehearted life, if you choose to be brave, to love deeply, to try new things, to create art, you will get your ass kicked.
It's not a possibility.
It's a guarantee. You will fall. You will fail, you will be hurt, you will know heartbreak. But Brown's argument, and I think Roosevelt's argument too, is that it is infinitely better to be in the arena, your face marred by dust and sweat and blood, than to be on the sidelines looking in. Because the sidelines are safe, but they are also where judgment and cynicism and regret live. And that's a very lonely, very small place to be.
It really is. So here is the challenge, I think, for you, for the listener. Where in your life are you armoring up?
That's the question. Are you rehearsing tragedy when you should be feeling joy? Are you staying crazy busy just to avoid being alone with your own thoughts? Are you trying to be the Viking 24/7?
Are you waiting until you're perfect before you finally decide to walk into the arena? Because if you are, you'll be waiting forever.
So maybe try dropping one shield this week. Just one. Maybe you share a small fear with your partner. Maybe you stop the negative self-talk the next time you make a mistake. Maybe you just let yourself feel happy for 5 minutes without waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Just see what happens, because as Brené would say, you are enough.
You are enough.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you in the arena next time.